Lolo Enki TV.
Session 15. January 30th, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite creator. I communicate now. Questioner, I would like to apologize for any past and future stupid questions. They are due to the fact that I am searching for the proper entry into the investigation of the Law of One. I would like to ask about the use of the instrument, if it is a function of the time we use the instrument or the amount of words or information the instrument gives. In other words, do I have to hurry and ask questions, or can I take my time to ask questions? Ra, I am Ra. There are two portions to your query. Firstly, this instrument's reserve of vital energy, which is a product of body, mind, and spirit distortions in the various complexes, is the key to the length of time which we may expend using this instrument. We searched your group and we contacted you, for each in your group possesses significantly more vital energy of the body complex. However, this instrument was tuned most appropriately by the mind-body-spirit complex distortions of its beingness in this illusion. Therefore, we remained with this instrument. Secondly, we communicate at a set rate which is dependent upon our careful manipulation of this instrument. We cannot be more, as you would say, quick. Therefore, you may ask questions speedily, but the answers we have to offer are at a set pace given. Questioner, this isn't exactly what I meant. If it takes me, say 45 minutes to ask my questions, does that give the instrument only 15 minutes to answer, or could the instrument go over an hour, all totaled, with her answers? Ra, I am Ra. The energy required for this contact is entered into this instrument by a function of time. Therefore, the time is the factor, as we understand your query. Questioner, then I should ask my questions rapidly so that I do not reduce the time. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. You shall do as you deem fit. However, we may suggest that to obtain the answers you require may mean that you invest some of what you experience as time. Although you lose the answer time, you gain thereby in the specificity of the answer. At many times in the past, we have needed clarification of hastily phrased questions. Questioner, thank you. The first question is this: why does rapid aging occur on this planet? Ra, I am Ra. Rapid aging occurs upon this third density planet due to an ongoing imbalance of receptor web complex in the etheric portion of the energy field of this planet. The thought-formed distortions of your peoples have caused the energy streamings to enter the planetary magnetic atmosphere, if you would so term this web of energy patterns, in such a way that the proper streamings are not correctly imbued with balanced vibratory light love from the, shall we say, cosmic level of this octave of existence. Questioner, do I assume correctly that one of your attempts in service to this planet was to help the population more fully understand and practice the Law of One so that this rapid aging could be changed to normal aging? Ra, I am Ra. You assume correctly to a great degree. Questioner, what is the greatest service that our population on this planet could perform individually? Ra, I am Ra. There is but one service. The law is one. The offering of self to Creator is the greatest service, the unity, the fountainhead. The entity who seeks the one Creator is with infinite intelligence. From this seeking, from this offering, a great multiplicity of opportunities will evolve depending upon the mind-body-spirit complex's distortions with regard to the various illusory aspects or energy centers of the various complexes of your illusion. Thus, some become healers, some workers, some teachers, and so forth. Questioner, if an entity were perfectly balanced with respect to the Law of One on this planet, would he undergo the aging process? Ra, I am Ra. A perfectly balanced entity would become tired rather than visibly aged. The lessons being learned, the entity would depart. However, this is appropriate and is a form of aging which your peoples do not experience. The understanding comes slowly, the body complex decomposing more rapidly. Questioner, can you tell me a little more about the word, balancing, as we are using it? Ra, I am Ra. Picture, if you will, the one infinite. You have no picture. Thus, the process begins. Love creating light, becoming love light, streams into the planetary sphere according to the electromagnetic web of points or nexi of entrance. These streamings are then available to the individual who, like the planet, is a web of electromagnetic energy fields with points or nexi of entrance. In a balanced individual, each energy center is balanced and functioning brightly and fully. The blockages of your planetary sphere cause some distortion of intelligent energy. The blockages of the mind-body-spirit complex further distort or unbalance this energy. There is one energy. It may be understood as love light or light love or intelligent energy. Questioner, am I correct to assume that one of the blockages of the mind-body-spirit complex might be, shall we say, ego, and this could be balanced using a worthiness-unworthiness balance? Am I correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. Questioner, can you tell me how you balance the ego? Ra, I am Ra. We cannot work with this concept as it is misapplied and understanding cannot come from it. Questioner, how does an individual go about balancing himself? What is the first step? Ra, I am Ra. The steps are only one, that is, an understanding of the energy centers which make up the mind-body-spirit complex. This understanding may be briefly summarized as follows. The first balancing is of the Malkuth, or Earth, vibratory energy complex, called the red ray complex. An understanding and acceptance of this energy is fundamental. The next energy complex, which may be blocked, is the emotional, or personal complex, also known as the orange ray complex. This blockage will often demonstrate itself as personal eccentricities or distortions with regard to self-conscious understanding or acceptance of self. The third blockage resembles most closely that which you have called ego. It is the yellow ray or solar plexus center. Blockages in this center will often manifest as distortion, stored power manipulation, and other social behaviors concerning those close and those associated with the mind-body-spirit complex. Those with blockages in these first three energy centers, or nexi, will have continuing difficulties in ability to further their seeking of the law of one. The center of heart, or green ray, is the center from which third density beings may springboard, shall we say, to infinite intelligence. Blockages in this area may manifest as difficulties in expressing what you may call universal love or compassion. The blue ray center of energy streaming is the center which, for the first time, is outgoing as well as inpouring. Those blocked in this area may have difficulty in grasping the spirit-mind complexes of its own entity and further difficulty in expressing such understandings of self. Entities blocked in this area may have difficulties in accepting communication from other mind-body-spirit complexes. The next center is the pineal or indigo ray center. Those blocked in this center may experience a lessening of the influx of intelligent energy due to manifestations which appear as unworthiness. This is that of which you spoke. As you can see, this is but one of many distortions due to the several points of energy influx into the mind-body-spirit complex. The indigo ray balancing is quite central to the type of work which revolves about the spirit complex, which has its influx then into the transformation or transmutation of third density to fourth density. It being the energy center receiving the least distorted outpourings of love light from intelligent energy and also the potential for the key to the gateway of intelligent infinity. The remaining center of energy influx is simply the total expression of the entity's vibratory complex of mind, body, and spirit. It is as it will be. Balanced or imbalanced has no meaning at this energy level, for it gives and takes in its own balance. Whatever the distortion may be, it cannot be manipulated as can the others and, therefore, has no particular importance in viewing the balancing of an entity. Questioner, you previously gave us information on what we should do in balancing. Is there any publishable information you can give us now about particular exercises or methods of balancing these energy centers? Ra, I am Ra. The exercises given for publication seen in comparison with the material now given are in total a good beginning. It is important to allow each seeker to enlighten itself rather than for any messenger to attempt in language to teach-learn for the entity, thus being teach-learner and learn-teacher. This is not in balance with your third density. We learn from you. We teach to you. Thus, we teach-learn. If we learned for you, this would cause imbalance in the direction of the distortion of free will. There are other items of information allowable. However, you have not yet reached these items in your line of questioning, and it is our belief feeling complex that the questioner shall shape this material in such a way that your mind-body-spirit complexes shall have entry to it. Thus we answer your queries as they arise in your mind complex. Questioner, yesterday you stated that the harvest is now. There is not at this time any reason to include efforts along this line of longevity, but rather to encourage efforts to seek the heart of self. This which resides clearly in the violet ray energy field will determine the harvest of the mind-body-spirit complex. Could you tell us the best way to seek the heart of self? Ra, I am Ra. We have given you this information in several wordings. However, we can only say the material for your understanding is the self. The mind-body-spirit complex. You have been given information upon healing, as you call this distortion. This information may be seen in a more general context as ways to understand the self. The understanding, experiencing, accepting, and merging of self with self and other self, and finally with the Creator, is the path to the heart of self. In each infinitesimal part of yourself resides the one and all of its power. Therefore, we can only encourage these lines of contemplation or prayer as a means of subjectively objectively using or combining various understandings to enhance the seeking process. Without such a method of reversing the analytical process, one could not integrate into unity the many understandings gained in such seeking. Questioner: I don't mean to ask the same question twice, but there are some areas that I consider so important that possibly a greater understanding may be obtained if the answer is restated a number of times. In other words, I thank you for your patience. Yesterday, you also mentioned that when there was no harvest at the end of the last 25,000-year period, there were harvestable entities who shall choose the manner of their entrance into the fourth density. Could you tell me what you mean by they shall choose the manner of their entry into the fourth density? Ra, I am Ra. These shepherds, or, as some have called them, the elder race, shall choose the time-space of their leaving. They are unlikely to leave until their other selves are harvestable also. Questioner: what do you mean by their other selves being harvestable? Ra, I am Ra. The other selves with whom these beings are concerned are those which did not attain harvest during the second major cycle. Questioner: could you tell me just a small amount of the history of what you call the elder race? Ra, I am Ra. The question is unclear. Please restate. Questioner: I ask this question because I have heard of the elder race before in a book, Road in the Sky, by George Hunt Williamson, and I was wondering if this elder race was the same that he talked about? Ra, I am Ra. The question now resolves itself, for we have spoken previously of the manner of decision-making which caused these entities to remain here upon the closing of the second major cycle of your current master cycle. There are some distortions in the descriptions of the one known as Michelle. However, these distortions have to do primarily with the fact that these entities are not a social memory complex, but rather a group of mind-body-spirit complexes dedicated to service. These entities work together, but are not completely unified, thus, they do not completely see each the other's thoughts, feelings, and motives. However, their desire to serve is the fourth-dimensional type of desire, thus melding them into what you may call a brotherhood. Questioner: why do you call them the elder race? Ra, I am Ra. We called them thusly to acquaint you, the questioner, with their identity as is understood by your mind complex distortion. Questioner: are there any wanderers with this elder race? Ra, I am Ra. These are planetary entities harvested, wanderers only in the sense that they chose, in fourth density love, to immediately reincarnate in third density rather than proceeding towards fourth density. This causes them to be wanderers of a type, wanderers who have never left the earth plane because of their free will rather than because of their vibrational level. Questioner: in yesterday's material you mentioned that the first distortion was the distortion of free will. Is there a sequence, a first, second, and third distortion of the law of one? Ra, I am Ra. Only up to a very short point. After this point, the manyness of distortions are equal one to another. The first distortion, free will, finds focus. This is the second distortion known to you as logos, the creative principle or love. This intelligent energy thus creates a distortion known as light. From these three distortions come many, many hierarchies of distortions, each having its own paradoxes to be synthesized, no one being more important than another. Questioner: you also said that you offered the law of one, which is the balancing of love light with light love. Is there any difference between light love and love light? Ra, I am Ra. This will be the final question of this time-space. There is the same difference between love light and light love as there is between teach learning and learn teaching. Love light is the enabler, the power, the energy giver. Light love is the manifestation which occurs when light has been impressed with love. Questioner: is there anything we can do to make the instrument more comfortable? Can we have 2 sessions today? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument requires a certain amount of manipulation of the physical or body complex due to its stiffness. Other than this, all is well, the energies being balanced. There is a slight distortion in the mental energy of this instrument due to concern for a loved one, as you call it. This is only slightly lowering the vital energies of the instrument. Given a manipulation, this instrument will be well for another working. Questioner: By manipulation, do you mean that she should go for a walk or that we should rub her back? Ra, I am Ra. We meant the latter. The understanding must be added that this manipulation be done by one in harmony with the entity. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. Session 16. January 31, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner, I would like to ask, considering the free will distortion of the law of one, how can the guardians quarantine the earth? Is this quarantine within free will? Ra, I am Ra. The guardians guard the free will distortion of the mind-body-spirit complexes of third density on this planetary sphere. The events which required activation of quarantine were interfering with the free will distortion of mind-body-spirit complexes. Questioner, I may be wrong, but it seems to me that it would be the free will of, say the Orion Group, to interfere. How is this balanced with the information which you just gave? Ra, I am Ra. The balancing is from dimension to dimension. The attempts of the so-called crusaders to interfere with free will are acceptable upon the dimension of their understanding. However, the mind-body-spirit complexes of this dimension you call third form a dimension of free will which is not able to, shall we say, recognize in full, the distortions towards manipulation. Thus, in order to balance the dimensional variances in vibration, a quarantine, this being a balancing situation whereby the free will of the Orion Group is not stopped but given a challenge. Meanwhile, the third group is not hindered from free choice. Questioner, could these windows that occur to let the Orion Group come through once in a while have anything to do with this free will balancing? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, could you tell me how that works? Ra, I am Ra. The closest analogy would be a random number generator within certain limits. Questioner, what is the source of this random number generator? Is it created by the guardians to balance their guarding? Or is it a source other than the guardians? Ra, I am Ra. All sources are one. However, we understand your query. The window phenomenon is another self-phenomenon from the guardians. It operates from the dimensions beyond space-time in what you may call the area of intelligent energy. Like your cycles, such balancing, such rhythms are as a clock striking. In the case of the windows, no entities have the clock. Therefore, it seems random. It is not random in the dimension which produces this balance. That is why we stated the analogy was within certain limits. Questioner, then this window balancing prevents the guardians from reducing their positive polarization by totally eliminating the Orion contact through shielding. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is partially correct. In effect, the balancing allows an equal amount of positive and negative influx, this balanced by the mind-body-spirit distortions of the social complex. Thus in your particular planetary sphere, less negative, as you would call it, information or stimulus is necessary than positive due to the somewhat negative orientation of your social complex distortion. Questioner, in this way, total free will is balanced so that individuals may have an equal opportunity to choose service to others or service to self. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, this is a profound revelation, I believe, in the law of free will. Thank you. This is a minor question further to make an example of this principle, but if the Confederation landed on Earth, they would be taken as gods, breaking the law of free will and thus reducing their polarization of service to all. I assume that the same thing would happen if the Orion Group landed. How would this affect their polarization of service to self if they were able to land and became known as gods? Ra, I am Ra. In the event of mass landing of the Orion Group, the effect of polarization would be strongly toward an increase in the service to self, precisely the opposite of the former opportunity which you mentioned. Questioner, if the Orion Group was able to land, would this increase their polarization? What I am trying to get at is it better for them to work behind the scenes to get recruits, shall we say, from our planet, the person from our planet going strictly on his own using free will? Or is it just as good for the Orion Group to land on our planet and demonstrate remarkable powers and get people like that? Ra, I am Ra. This first instance is, in the long run, shall we put it, more salubrious for the Orion Group in that it does not infringe upon the law of one by landing and, thus, does its work through those of this planet. In the second circumstance, a mass landing would create a loss of polarization due to the infringement upon the free will of the planet. However, it would be a gamble. If the planet were then conquered and became part of the empire, the free will would then be re-established. This is restrained in action due to the desire of the Orion group to progress towards the One Creator. This desire to progress inhibits the group from breaking the law of confusion. Questioner, you mentioned the word empire in relation to the Orion group. I have thought for some time that the movie Star Wars was somehow an allegory for what is actually happening. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct in the same way that a simple children's story is an allegory for physical, philosophical, social, complex distortion understanding. Questioner, is there a harvest of entities oriented toward service to self like there is a harvest of those oriented toward service to others? Ra, I am Ra. There is one harvest. Those able to enter fourth density through vibrational complex levels may choose the manner of their further seeking of the One Creator. Questioner, then as we enter the fourth density there will be a split, shall we say? And part of the individuals who go into the fourth density will go into planets or places where there is service to others and part will go into places where there is service to self. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, can you tell me the origin of the 10 Commandments? Ra, I am Ra. The origin of these commandments follows the law of negative entities impressing information upon positively oriented mind-body-spirit complexes. The information attempted to copy or aid positivity while retaining negative characteristics. Questioner, was this done by the Orion group? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, what was their purpose in doing this? Ra, I am Ra. The purpose of the Orion group, as mentioned before, is conquest and enslavement. This is done by finding and establishing an elite and causing others to serve the elite through various devices such as the laws you mentioned and others given by this entity. Questioner, was the recipient of the commandments positively or negatively oriented? Ra, I am Ra. The recipient was one of extreme positivity, thus accounting for some of the pseudo-positive characteristics of the information received. As with contacts which are not successful, this entity, vibratory complex, Moisha, did not remain a credible influence among those who had first heard the philosophy of one, and this entity was removed from this third density vibratory level in a lessened or saddened state, having lost what you may call the honor and faith with which he had begun the conceptualization of the law of one and the freeing of those who were of his tribes, as they were called at that time-space. Questioner, if this entity was positively oriented, how was the Orion group able to contact him? Ra, I am Ra. This was an intensive, shall we say, battleground between positively oriented forces of Confederation origin and negatively oriented sources. The one called Moisha was open to impression and received the law of one in its most simple form. However, the information became negatively oriented due to his people's pressure to do specific physical things in the third density planes. This left the entity open for the type of information and philosophy of a self-service nature. Questioner, it would be wholly unlike an entity fully aware of the knowledge of the law of one to ever say thou shalt not. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, can you give me some kind of history of your social memory complex and how you became aware of the law of one? Ra, I am Ra. The path of our learning is graven in the present moment. There is no history, as we understand your concept. Picture, if you will, a circle of being. We know the Alpha and Omega as infinite intelligence. The circle never ceases. It is present. The densities we have traversed at various points in the circle correspond to the characteristics of cycles. First, the cycle of awareness. Second, the cycle of growth. Third, the cycle of self-awareness. Fourth, the cycle of love or understanding. Fifth, the cycle of light or wisdom. Sixth, the cycle of light-love, love-light or unity. Seventh, the gateway cycle. Eighth, the octave which moves into a mystery we do not plumb. Questioner, thank you very much. In previous material, before we communicated with you, it was stated by the Confederation that there is actually no past or future, that all is present. Would this be a good analogy? Ra, I am Ra. There is past, present, and future in third density. In an overview such as an entity may have, removed from the space-time continuum, it may be seen that in the cycle of completion there exists only the present. We, ourselves, seek to learn this understanding. At the seventh level or dimension, we shall, if our humble efforts are sufficient, become one with all, thus having no memory, no identity, no past or future, but existing in the all. Questioner, does this mean that you would have awareness of all that is? Ra, I am Ra. This is partially correct. It is our understanding that it would not be our awareness, but simply awareness of the Creator. In the Creator is all that there is. Therefore, this knowledge would be available. Questioner, I was wondering how many inhabited planets there are in our galaxy and if they all reach higher density by the law of one? It doesn't seem that there would be any other way to reach higher density. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. Please restate your query. Questioner, how many inhabited planets are there in our galaxy? Ra, I am Ra. We are assuming that you intend all dimensions of consciousness or densities of awareness in this question. Approximately 1/5 of all planetary entities contain awareness of one or more densities. Some planets are hospitable only for certain densities. Your planet, for instance, is at this time hospitable for densities 1, 2, 3, and 4. Questioner, roughly how many total planets in this galaxy of stars that we are in are aware regardless of density? Ra, I am Ra. Approximately 67 million. Questioner, can you tell me what percentage of those are third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. density? Ra, I am Ra. A percentage 17 for first density, a percentage 20 for second density, a percentage 27 for third density, a percentage 16 for fourth density, a percentage 6 for fifth density. The other information must be withheld. Questioner, of these first 5 densities, have all of the planets progressed from the third density by knowledge and application of the law of one? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, then the only way for a planet to get out of the situation that we are in is for the population to become aware of and start practicing the law of one. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, can you tell me what percentage of the third, fourth, and fifth density planets which you have spoken of here are polarized negatively towards service to self? Ra, I am Ra. This is not a query to which we may speak given the law of confusion. We may say only that the negatively or self-service-oriented planetary spheres are much fewer. To give you exact numbers would not be appropriate. Questioner, I would like to make an analogy as to why there are fewer negatively oriented, and then ask you if the analogy is good. In a positively oriented society with service to others, it would be simple to move a large boulder by getting everyone to help move it. In a society oriented towards service to self, it would be much more difficult to get everyone to work for the good of all to move the boulder. Therefore, it is much easier to get things done to create the service to others principle and to grow in positively oriented communities than in negatively oriented communities. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, thank you very much. Can you tell me how the Confederation of Planets was formed and why? Ra, I am Ra. The desire to serve begins, in the dimension of love or understanding, to be an overwhelming goal of the social memory complex. Thus, those percentiles of planetary entities, plus approximately 4% more of whose identity we cannot speak, found themselves long ago in your time seeking the same thing, service to others. The relationship between these entities as they entered an understanding of other beings, other planetary entities, and other concepts of service was to share and continue together these commonly held goals of service. Thus, each voluntarily placed the social memory complex data in what you may consider a central thought complex available to all. This then created a structure whereby each entity could work in its own service while calling upon any other understanding needed to enhance the service. This is the cause of the formation and the manner of the working of the Confederation. Questioner, with such a large number of planets in this galaxy, you say that there are approximately 500 planets in the Confederation. There seems to be a relatively small number of Confederation planets around. Is there a reason for it? Ra, I am Ra. There are many confederations. This confederation works with the planetary spheres of 7 of your galaxies, if you will, and is responsible for the callings of the densities of these galaxies. Questioner, would you define the word galaxy as you just used it? Ra, I am Ra. We use that term in this sense as you would use star systems. Questioner, I'm a little bit confused as to how many total planets the confederation that you're in serves? Ra, I am Ra. I see the confusion. We have difficulty with your language. The galaxy term must be split. We call galaxy that vibrational complex that is local. Thus, your sun is what we would call the center of a galaxy. We see you have another meaning for this term. Questioner, yes. In our science the term galaxy refers to the lenticular star system that contains millions and millions of stars. There was a confusion about this in one of our earlier communications, and I'm glad to get it cleared up. Using the term galaxy in the sense that I just stated, using the lenticular star system that contains millions of stars, do you know of evolution in other galaxies besides this one? Ra, I am Ra. We are aware of life in infinite capacity. You are correct in this assumption. Questioner, can you tell me if the progression of life in other galaxies is similar to the progression of life in our galaxy? Ra, I am Ra. The progression is somewhat close to the same, asymptotically approaching congruency throughout infinity. The free choosing of what you would call galactic systems causes variations of an extremely minor nature from one of your galaxies to another. Questioner, then the law of one is truly universal in creating a progression towards the 8th density in all galaxies. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. There are infinite forms, infinite understandings, but the progression is one. Questioner, I am assuming that it is not necessary for an individual to understand the law of one to go from the 3rd to the 4th density. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. It is absolutely necessary that an entity consciously realize it does not understand in order for it to be harvestable. Understanding is not of this density. Questioner, that is a very important point. I used the wrong word. What I meant to say was that I believed that it was not necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one to go from the 3rd to the 4th density. Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, at what point in the densities is it necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one in order to progress? Ra, I am Ra. The 5th density harvest is of those whose vibratory distortions consciously accept the honor duty of the law of one. This responsibility honor is the foundation of this vibration. Questioner, can you tell me a little more about this honor responsibility concept? Ra, I am Ra. Each responsibility is an honor, each honor, a responsibility. Questioner, thank you. Is it possible for you to give a short description of the conditions in the 4th density? Ra, I am Ra. We ask you to consider as we speak that there are not words for positively describing 4th density. We can only explain what is not and approximate what is. Beyond 4th density our ability grows more limited until we become without words. That which 4th density is not, it is not of words, unless chosen. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities. It is not of disharmony within self. It is not of disharmony within peoples. It is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. Approximations of positive statements. It is a plane of type of bipedal vehicle which is much denser and more full of life. It is a plane wherein one is aware of the thought of other selves. It is a plane wherein one is aware of vibrations of other selves. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of 3rd density. It is a plane striving towards wisdom or light. It is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced although automatically harmonized by group consensus. Questioner, could you define the word density as we have been using it? Ra, I am Ra. The term density is what you call, mathematical one. The closest analogy is that of music, whereby after 7 notes on your Western type of scale, if you will, the 8th note begins a new octave. Within your great octave of existence which we share with you, there are 7 octaves or densities. Within each density there are 7 subdensities. Within each subdensity are 7 sub-subdensities. Within each sub-subdensity, 7 sub-sub-subdensities and so on infinitely. Questioner, I notice that the time of this session has gone slightly over an hour. I would like to ask at this time if we should go on. What is the condition of the instrument? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument is in balance. It is well to continue if you desire. Questioner, I understand that each density has 7 subdensities which again have 7 subdensities and so on. This is expanding at a really large rate as each is increased by powers of 7. Does this mean that in any density level anything that you can think of is happening? Ra, I am Ra. From your confusion we select the concept with which you struggle, that being infinity opportunity. You may consider any possibility probability complex as having an existence. Questioner, do things like daydreams become real in other densities? Ra, I am Ra. This depends upon the nature of the daydream. This is a large subject. Perhaps the simplest thing we can say is, if the daydream, as you call it, is one which attracts to self, this then becomes reality to self. If it is a contemplative general daydream, this may enter the infinity of possibility probability complexes and occur elsewhere, having no particular attachment to the energy fields of the creator. Questioner, to make this a little more clear, if I were to daydream strongly about building a ship, would this occur in one of these other densities? Ra, I am Ra. This would or shall occur. Questioner, then if an entity daydreams strongly about battling an entity, would this occur? Ra, I am Ra. In this case, the entity's fantasy concerns the self and other self, this binding the thought form to the possibility-probability complex, connected with the self which is the creator of this thought form. This then would increase the possibility-probability of bringing this into third density occurrence. Questioner: does the Orion group use this principle to create conditions favorable to suit their purpose? Ra: I am Ra. We will answer more specifically than the question. The Orion group uses daydreams of hostile or other negative natures to feed back or strengthen these thought forms. Questioner: are the many wanderers who have and are coming to our planet subject to the Orion thoughts? Ra: I am Ra. As we have said before, wanderers become completely the creature of third density and mind-body complex. There is just as much chance of such influence to a wanderer entity as to a mind-body-spirit complex of this planetary sphere. The only difference occurs in the spirit complex which, if it wishes, has an armor of light, if you will, which enables it to recognize more clearly that which is not as it would appropriately be desired by the mind-body-spirit complex. This is not more than bias and cannot be called an understanding. Furthermore, the wanderer is, in its own mind-body-spirit, less distorted toward the, shall we say, deviousness of third density positive-negative confusions. Thus, it often does not recognize as easily as a more negative individual the negative nature of thoughts or beings. Questioner: then would the wanderers, as they incarnate here, be high-priority targets of the Orion group? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: if a wanderer should be successfully infringed upon, shall I say, by the Orion group, what would happen to this wanderer when harvest came? Ra: I am Ra. If the wanderer entity demonstrated through action a negative orientation towards other selves, it would be, as we have said before, caught into the planetary vibration and, when harvested, possibly repeat again the master cycle of third density as a planetary entity. This shall be the last full question of this session. Is there a short question we may answer before we close this session? Questioner: can the instrument be made more comfortable? Ra: I am Ra. This instrument is as comfortable as it is possible for you to make it given the weakness distortions of its body complex. You are conscientious. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace. Adonai.